So I missed 2 weeks ago. Michael ran the meeting. I was just reading through his notes. They're all up there for anyone to see. I'll go through the ongoing things, and then we can open it up for any new opens. And it looks like the July 4th meeting was not held because of the holiday. So I assume we'll talk a little bit more EDK2 process. I don't know if you want to do any updates now, or you want to wait for the end, given that it'll probably be could lead to the most comments.
One other topic I think it's worth at least mentioning it here is there was a presentation in the community meeting last week about software bill of materials. And I encourage they've got a proposed patch set for a tools change to help with collecting the software bill of materials into a PECOF image. And I suggested that the submitter maybe come to this meeting to discuss the problem statement and the proposed solution. And that's coming from some of the LVFS part of the public community for firmware updates, wanting to get us standardized software bill of materials into all firmware updates. And so they're wanting to see EDK2 kind of join that standard. So just wanted to put it on there as a topic. I think it was Martin Fernandez or something like that was the developer that's actually submitted a patch. So I wanted to raise that here, and maybe we can invite him to come join one of these discussions.
Okay, yeah, that sounds great. I have the YouTube video up of the meeting. I have not watched it yet.
Okay.
If anyone else hasn't, I think Mickey sent out a link to the YouTube video.
Right. So maybe Sean, you can reach out after you watch the video and kind of see what the context is reach out to them, because I think it's not a friendly time zone for them, this meeting time, but they said they'd be willing to come for a one-off to come to this forum.
Okay, great. I saw the static analysis code QL came up. I did a little bit of research on that. It does, just like Coverity, kind of create an experience where you have issues listed, and then they have different states. The PRs where they are introduced will show when new code QL issues come up. And you can mark them whether they're important or not. You can ignore them, those kind of things. We're still kind of going through the usage of code QL. There is a lot of issues on EDK2. I don't have a list of them today, but we do have, I think, on our Mu base core, which is heavily based on EDK2 code, there was at least, I think, 800. I'll try to get those categorized, and we can bring them up.
Yeah, I think from a scale perspective, I think that's similar to what Coverity was identifying, that was not reviewed carefully to determine like how many false positives there were. That level of triage had not been done yet, but the same kind of scale of number of issues identified was there.
Okay. We also have set up on Project Mu, this to be a run, I think, nightly. So we have some Azure pipeline files that can do that. We've also used the GitHub Actions to do it as well. So we have both examples. We could pick between if this is the path we want to go down. I think we're still kind of exploring how much value is coming out of this versus the cost and effort.
So for you say the cost as far as just developer time, or is there a cost to run the service?
No, the cost is just server time to run it, whether it be rolled into PRs and slowing down our PR process, or rolled into a nightly build and having developers review and go back and triage and so forth.
Right, and I believe I think in the RFC forum, that's where Felix from AMI has been proposing the static analysis process for EDK2, and due to at least our evaluation of OpenCode Verity is they are not compatible with us doing it for every PR for both how long it takes to process, but also for projects above a certain size, they'll only let you do a few a week. So we were leaning towards doing a weekly scan through static analysis and looking at the new issues that were introduced in the previous week's commits and getting a commitment from the community to resolve those newly discovered issues quickly. That was the latest discussion on that on the RFC. So it sounds like you're seeing similar constraints from this analysis tool as well, as far as how often you can run it.
Yeah, I think the one difference is it doesn't actually take that long. It really basically is the same time as a build. So if we look at that, it would be one extra build per package on every PR. So we probably could afford the time if we wanted to. And we definitely have seen projects that are doing this on every PR.
Okay.
But there's still that overhead of, lots of people submit PRs just with the intent of testing them out and,
right,
making sure that
we can start taking advantage of the draft PR, and try to figure out how to do subsets of tests.
Yep. And there's definitely ways to trigger tests. Yeah, that might be a path where we could go as well, even for some of our current stuff, where we run a very lightweight scan on everyone's PR, and then people comment, or someone has to comment to enable some of the more robust testing.
Or we could do it with labels or something like that. I mean, these are great topics to help refine the process. I agree. There's a couple of use cases. I think the use case for a developer who doesn't have access to all the tool chains and can go use our CI system to do some basic tests before they send it for formal review. That use case is very interesting. And then when you send it for formal review and full CI testing, is there an order that we want to do those such that we don't use up server time for something that's going to get rejected for something simpler earlier on in our test sequence?
Yep. Okay. I also see a comment from 2 weeks ago about the EDK2 base tools release process. Did that get resolved? Mike, it sounded like you had a question.
Yeah, it doesn't appear to be documented in the README at all about how you actually request a formal release of the base tools pip.
So there's definitely some updating of that whole project as we want to move it into the formal solution. But if you recall, the RFC and I think the README, I'll go look, basically says that every commit you make will be an official release. That was the request from the community, or the one active person who responded, who requested that every time a commit lands, a release is made.
Okay, so then really and I think this is what we figured out, is the way that you make something official is by updating pip requirements.txt to specify a new version of base tools that you want used for our CI and developer workflows.
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly.
So maybe just adding that to the README would help. It's like, okay, yeah, new release is created, but it doesn't become activated in EDK2 CI or for developers until either pip requirements is updated or developer manually, picks up a newer version.
Yep. Okay, that makes sense. See, I see a little bit of recap on VS 2022. I don't think there's been any new progress on that. And there was talk around the Python 3.9. Was there any follow-up for the platform mapping of library classes is, you know, I think a few weeks ago we had a good discussion. It looks like 2 weeks ago you also had more talk.
I think we were going to maybe start a discussion or something like that to get more information about what we want to do.
Okay. And okay, looking at the last couple of things, the tools def, before I went on vacation, I hit send on an email, I think, where I said I would maintain VS 2022 and 2019 for now. Michael, have you sent out an email, or anyone else in the community sent out an email around maintaining any of the places where we have gaps? Basically the tool chains we expect we need, but no one has signed up to be a maintainer.
I think we're going to need, you know, we need GCC 5 and Clang. And I think for a while at least, we're going to need 2015 and newer. So we're going to need some owners for 2015 and 2017.
Is that something you're actively searching for within Intel?
I need to start that. I have not done that yet, Sean.
Okay.
So maybe Bob, maybe you can help get some identified owners that if there's issues with 2015 or 2017, they would help the EDK2 community resolve them.
Okay, yeah, I will try to find someone can help.
Okay.
I've been building a report that kind of, I was hoping would be the template everyone, whoever's a maintainer, would fill in at the stable tag to kind of fulfill the duty of, yes, this is the current state of this stable tag with this tool chain. Do you think that still makes sense? Is that still a good way to kind of confirm the maintainership is happening?
Well, I thought we, you know, for sure, a documentation after release is important, but I think there's 3 states that we want to document. One is the tool chain part of CI, or automated CI. The second one is the tool chain supported, meaning that if something breaks for somebody, there is a person maintainer available to help triage and fix and resolve the build issue. And then the third state is unmaintained, right? And so as far as what do you fill in the release report about those, that second one where there's a supported tool chain and there's a contact, I'm okay with that being in the report, but I think you'd also want that more readily available as part of the kind of the trunk material, right?
I think for that aspect, I was hoping we could create a Bugzilla topic. I think it's topic, where people could file bugs. And if there wasn't a topic, that indicated that, well, that was one way to tell that the tool chain was not actively supported. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm not sure if you know if somebody picks up the release and they try an old tool chain, you know, they're likely only going to be looking at the release notes kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. Well, so, okay. I guess, so the couple thoughts I had would be, with the release notes, we would publish these reports that would indicate all the packages that had compiled successfully, all the architectures, and then the tool chain. And then if there was a build error or a problem, they could file a bug against one of those. If it wasn't actively supported, there'd be no place to file a bug. And ideally, the tool chain doesn't even exist in the tools def anymore if it's not actively supported.
Right, and we'll go through that as far as actually removing some as we go through this process. But I think the state right now is we have all 3 states. So, and I don't think Bugzilla is the right place to document it. I think the Bugzilla is the right place. If somebody has a build issue and wants to report it, they can report it through Bugzilla to go get something fixed or a discussion on the email list. But I feel pretty strongly that the release itself needs to list all the tool chains and what their status is. All the tool chains that are identified in ToolsDef and what their
Okay.
status of each one.
That makes sense.
And I agree wholeheartedly that if we have unmaintained or tool chains that just don't make sense anymore because they're like not even available, we need to get those out of ToolsDef.
Is Lemming the right person to talk to about the release note process?
Yes.
Okay.
I may have missed part of the discussion, but did we talk about testing reproducibility of the Azure host builds based on the VM like version information and capturing that as part of the release, or is that something that we didn't touch on today?
That hasn't come up today.
Oh, okay.
So your concerns are that the VMs are changing and staying current, which is helpful and good, except for when it comes down to reproducibility.
Yeah. I think we were talking particularly around stable tags. It might be good whenever the stable tag is made to capture what environment it was built against exactly in terms of all the tools. At least it's fairly easy for the VM images because we can just go to the release page for them and grab the tool like versioning information that's already produced. But then the missing link was there's a lot of dependencies we have that are captured in various places, like our pip modules is one. So so then we started building up a list of like, well, if you get the VM versioning information, that's one set. Then there's pip, and then there's things like NuGet packages that we're also pulling down. And so it was kind of just building up the entire collection of various things that we were using to build an image at important release points.
So,
The
go ahead.
example Michael gave last time, which was seemed really important, was the VM images will update like the Visual Studio patch level without notification. So that means that if there's anything about the Visual Studio backend that affects code gen, and you want to have binary reproducibility, knowing exactly which version of Visual Studio and patch level was used at the release time would be important.
So for the CI system, we actually create and publish a file, I think. We created a file called build tools report. So for anyone who's able to view the artifacts from a build, which I understand is not everyone, we do create a file there that has a whole bunch of versions stored. And when we use the Visual Studio toolchain, we actually do record the patch level of the compiler used.
Okay. So yeah, I think that, as you're pointing out, the information is available in various spots, but I think once again, I think it's a conversation with our release owner, which is Lemming right now, about what are the release report requirements, and if there's additional information we'd like to see collected into that release report, let's figure out what those are so that we can start doing that and be consistent about it.
Yep. And it actually does pull all things out of pip. It pulls the Python version. It pulls all the defined dependencies. So IASL, I'm looking right now at the GCC AR64 build, so it pulls down the version of the GCC compiler for AR64 as well as NASM. So it does version those, and it can be extended if there's other things we need to be added, but it does version all those things.
Okay, and I actually have no idea if there's like a standard format for some of this information, like we talked about the software bill of materials for our firmware builds, like this reproducibility of a software project, if there's like a standard way to list your inventory of dependencies.
Yeah, I don't know either. We made this up as we built the CI system for this reason, but I agree, we didn't. I mean, really, the only way it would be super useful is if you could plug these versions back into the build system and tell it to go use these versions. But that hasn't been built. So at this point, it's just a table of names and versions. So I'll add that to the list for Lemming to publish. Or I
Okay.
guess it needs to support more than just our CI system. So if anyone is maintaining a tool chain like GCC5, for example, they would need to publish the stuff manually so that Lemming could add it to the release as well.
Okay. And maybe I think this meeting time is possible for Lemming to join. So maybe after you do some email conversations, maybe you can ask if he can come here and give us an update on what he's planning to do for a revised release process with this additional information.
Okay.
So do we have a list somewhere of Google Summer of Code suggestions?
Yes. There's a page for that.
I was thinking and gets all of those versions would be kind of nifty. And it'd be a difficult enough thing that a student could do it, and we get a lot of experience.
Yeah, you're welcome to submit or in our that ideas page with new ones with a summary there. I think somebody like
you
Nick,
could go.
I'm sorry, Kevin, but you're breaking up. We're having trouble hearing you.
Kevin, you still there? Okay, I'll try to find the link to that page. I know it's in the wiki and include it with the notes. Kevin, I see you went off mute. Are you back? Okay. Well, Michael, anything else on that topic?
No, that's all.
Yeah, I put a link to the tasks page, Sean, on the chat.
Perfect. Are there other opens? That looks like the last of the stuff from last week or 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, my one topic, Sean, is I can give a little bit of a status of my evaluation of use of code owners.
Okay.
And I can actually share just a bit here. section here. Let me know if you can see the screen.
Yep.
Okay. So what I've done is I have translated maintainers.txt into a code owners format and then written a GitHub action that verifies whether or not the maintainers and reviewers identified by maintainers.txt matches the maintainers and reviewers identified in code owners format. So this is an example of this action running, and it comes down here and says that there were no mismatches. What it actually does is it uses a get ls files to get every file that's in our EDK2 repo, and then looks up the reviewers and maintainers from both perspectives and verifies that the lists match. So I've gotten just today for them to match 100% for all the files in the EDK2 repo. And this is actually hosted within our Tano Core EDK2 code review. I've got a branch in there, which is called the Add Code Owners and Reviewers is the name of the branch in that repo. And in the .github, because I've done it as an action, and that's where they want these anyways, I've added the code owners file. And what's interesting about this is we want to propose with one of those options for the moving to the GitHub based code review is we want to set up the branch protection policy such that the code owners identify the maintainers that must approve in order for the branch to go into the state where it's possibly mergeable. And then we have a second group of individuals that are considered reviewers for different parts of the tree, but they're just inputters to the maintainers to make the decision to do the final approval. So when we talk about like the less common scenario where a maintainer does an act by today, which says they trust somebody else to do the review and they're waiting for somebody else to do the review that's one of the assigned reviewers, and a reviewer does a reviewed by, the combination of the maintainer doing the act by and the reviewer doing the reviewed by is considered approved for that patch or series. And so in order to get to that same concept, what that would mean is we'd want the code owners would be to be the maintainers. And if they wanted to do the act by, they can wait and watch for one of the reviewers to approve the PR. And then one of the maintainers can simply say approved because they trusted the reviewer that did it, versus the maintainer taking on the reviewer role as well and doing an approval based upon their own review. So both are possible as long as we don't mix them together. So this idea that I've got here is based upon some other GitHub actions that are actually available in the GitHub the GitHub marketplace for actions, using code owners as the maintainers, and then the reviewers file here, which is an extra file that will only be used to assign additional reviewers to the PR, but will not be added to the branch protection policy. So that's the concept I was going for here. What this file looks like, I've left the maintainers.txt content in comments, and this uses .gitignore syntax. So you can see here where in the maintainers.txt it was a f:* for the default rule, and that turns into asterisks and then the list of individuals that are considered maintainers. So everything that's an m: here in any of these areas is then updated. So the Azure pipelines becomes anything below Azure pipelines, any files or directories below that, the maintainers are Sean and Brett today, because those are the two M's. Notice the reviewers are not listed here in this file. And so this goes on through here. It's a pretty sparse file as far as the actual contents when you get down to it, because of all the comments from maintainers.txt. And a lot of these things in here are reviewers only, and then some more maintainers. There's an interesting rule difference between maintainers.txt and code owners. maintainers.txt, if there's a match in multiple F:" rules from maintainers.txt, it does the union of all of the individuals if there's more than one match. Code owners basically is a prioritized one, and the last rule, you know, the rule furthest into the file that matches the file is the one that gets assigned, and only that one line. You can put more than one name on the line, but you will not do the union of multiple lines. It only takes the last one. That caused some unusual differences that make writing the file in the code owner's format a little more complicated, especially in our more complex packages like the MDE module package that contains a lot of content with different review responsibilities within. And some of them are written generically, like this one's like an example of one that says, hey, anything related to S3, these are the two reviewers. But we have, and there's other ones around Lockbox and SMM, but then there's other things around like status code that are a different set of reviewers for any things related to status code. And like, here's the example here of status code. But we also have ones that are status code for the SMM environment. So we have to then come down in here and build a few extra rules. Sorry for the scrolling. Here's the extra rules. So here's where you'll see something like combining SMM and status code, and it's the union of those two sets of reviewers. Okay, so this was the only thing that was extra work odd about converting from our maintainers.txt format that supports matching multiple file matchings and union them and merging them, the set of reviewers together or maintainers together, versus the code owner style, which says I match at most one line. So you have to kind of manually figure out that there's these different combinations that might be there. So you see there's about 20, 16 to 20 extra rules I had to go throw in order to get this to work right and get the exact same result as maintainers.txt today.
Okay. I could see that being a little bit of a challenge, and I would envision that as you add more detailed sections, it will become a little more difficult, right?
Yes, and part of this also I look at, and it's like, okay, if there's SMM status code, who do you really want to review that? Is it really the status code reviewers? Did we make it? Were we adding extra reviewers that were not really paying attention, right? It's one of those side effect things. Did the SMM stuff really mean more of the SMM core things as opposed to individual SMM modules for certain areas, right? So I think that's a conversation with the reviewers. They may have been assigned to things that didn't really apply to them. So I think this is this kind of, we'll raise that conversation amongst all the reviewers to make sure their assignments are correct.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I'd rather keep rules simple.
Yep.
So there's that, and the come back here to this. There's the code owners files.
So the reviewer file, is that an automatic feature of GitHub, or was that something you had to customize?
This is a customization in a sense. There are some things in the GitHub Action Marketplace that support, for example, additional files above and beyond code owners that can specify like additional reviewers, and it can then go do those assignments. They are not necessarily well maintained or widely used, and they actually have some limitations to them. So what I was considering is, if I look at this script here, this is the one that actually runs, that does the comparison. It goes and reads the sections from the maintainers.txt file. It has a small function here that, given a file and the sections that were parsed, go return the list of maintainers and reviewers associated with that file from maintainers.txt. And very nicely, somebody wrote a Python module for the code owners file. Okay. And that one is well maintained and and appears to be widely used. And it allows you to pass in the file to read. So you can have the idea of, okay, who are the owners, who are the reviewers from two different source files that are in the code owners format. And then you can say, for example, their one is like the reviewer of file, the .of function says, okay, who are the reviewers of that file, or who are the, owners of that file, which in our case is like the maintainers. And then it does the comparison. So this is the whole script that goes through all the files through LS files and gets the maintainers and reviewers from the maintainers.txt, and then from the code owners and reviewers file in the code owners format, and make sure that every file has maintainers and that the maintainers and reviewers exactly match between the two.
If we
So-
were to use this, the code owner file would automatically create, during the PR creation process, it would automatically add them as required reviewers.
Correct, and
Git-
it will also branch protection policies as well.
And the GitHub action would have to run to then add the additional reviewers. Is that what would happen?
Yes, yeah, so this example script here, run it as a GitHub action, is just a kind of a verifier, right?
Yep.
But another version of this Python script that I would write, which is basically taking the larger script I'd already started on with generating the emails for code review actions. It was going down the path already of processing maintainers.txt and assigning reviewers. We can have a much smaller scope, just a GitHub action that runs whenever there's a push, a PR opened, or a forced push to that PR, or a commit added to that PR, that adds and removes reviewers based upon the files that are changed, by basically using this Python module to go get the reviewers and then go use the GitHub API to go get the current set of reviewers and compare to see if there's any reviewers that need to be added or removed. So it would be a very small Python script run as a GitHub action, checked in as the code as part of our repository, and not part of the external service that does the email stuff.
Yep.
So it'd be very close to the, as far as how it works from the code owner's perspective. It's automatic based upon the settings, plus now one GitHub action that would process reviewers that would be very small in scope and easy to maintain. So that's my next step, is to go see if I can get that small script implemented that would do the reviewer assignment. And then we can try that out on a couple PRs and start evaluating some of the opens you had at the beginning of the meeting, Sean, about what happens to comments that are set at the PR scope versus comments that may be applied at the commit scope, and then across a forced push after that.
Yep. Okay, sounds great.
But I think from a feasibility perspective, I've proven that we can map maintainers into the code owners format.
Sounds good.
Any other comments or questions on this, or suggestions on next steps?
Did you receive any feedback on your discussion for the PR process?
Not so far. I probably, as at that next step where I'm going to invite others into this EDK2 code review for some example PRs, I will do that to the community, because with what I've set up here, depending on what the PR file's modified, it's going to start sending notifications about review requests, right, to everybody. So I want to give them a heads up ahead of time, and then I can point them at that discussion and say, we're evaluating, that option 7 at the bottom, with taking advantage of some of the code owners format here. And as part of that evaluation, we're going to go look at those other options if they have feedback, give feedback on the discussion, and collect their feedback on their experience within that discussion.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, any other topics for today?
So, yes, Sean.
Yes.
This is Mickey, and so I wanted to let everyone know that I have created a Tiano Core community YouTube channel. And I've added you, Sean, Michael Kenny, Laurie Jarlstrom, Rainey, and Gal Liming as managers, because we're very quickly running out of room on groups.io. And I want to make sure that we have a place where we can have all of our meeting recordings that are community-based meetings. And so you have the ability now to upload your meetings up there, and I will be in the process of transferring all the ones that we have currently on groups.io up to the YouTube channel.
Okay, sounds great. Did you have to do any post-processing?
No,
Great. I have one meeting that's still on my computer that I could not upload because it was too big.
right.
It was
you
Mike's
should-
presentation.
Yeah, go ahead and upload it. It should upload just fine.
Okay, great.
There, the YouTube sometimes has a time limit, Mickey, on how long a recording can be that can be uploaded without a pay for service. Do you know what the time limit is on the current one?
It's not a time limit. It's like 260 gigabytes size,
Okay,
right? And all of ours are in the 300 to 400 megabyte range. But
Yeah, I
where
think-
I had one to upload, I could not upload this last meeting where we did the LVFS because there wasn't room.
Yeah, I kept getting blocked at 100 megs, and I
Yep.
split a couple meetings in two, but it's still after post-processing, it made the file larger. So I was just gonna have to do some other more advanced video editing and didn't really want to do that.
Well, please give it a try. You've been invited to be a manager, so you should be able to upload.
Sounds great. I think that's a better platform anyway, so that's good.
Yeah, and it's a channel for Tiano Core community, so it will be a place that even if somebody was to leave, I can pass ownership to somebody else too. I'm the current owner right now.
Sounds good.
That's all I have. And I did post the link to the LVFS SBOM in the chat window for anybody who'd like to go watch that. It is actually a pretty interesting presentation and conversation that was had.
Sounds good. I did reference that earlier in the meeting, so that's good. Yep. Is this time still good? Mike, I heard there might be some issue to move it around. Is that true?
I think this one's okay.
Okay, great. All right, well, we can meet next week. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sean.
Bye.